Comite, comitato, comitiet.
This is the committee program with Arun Chaudhary, Julia Doubleday, Forrest, Lovette, Fiamma, Meli, Xhevat, Castrati, and yours truly, Jacopo, Castelletti. We now join the program, already in progress.
Okay, so you pull down on the thing, and then the blade collapses, and then you can close the tool. Now, normally when Jacopo says we join the show already in progress, he's just indicating it's one of our hiatus shows before the beginning of season 2 next spring. And he's also indicating that we're sort of diving right in, not exactly knowing what's happening. Today, it's particularly apt because actually there is glass all over the studio. I have broken several things, including the teleprompter that was supposed to guide me along what would have been otherwise an extremely well-clustered monologue, incisive, insightful, and without the teleprompter, there's nothing even happening here. But none of this would stop us from bringing you today's important dispatch from Santiago. The show's own Julia Doubleday is on the ground as the Chilean election and constitutional referendum and that whole gestalt we've been talking about is happening, and she is going to bring us an update, and that is going to be incredibly exciting. First, we're going to cut for commercial break. Then we're going to come back and do some polls with some smooth tunes. And then finally, we will deliver unto you in extraordinary dispatches from the field from the show's own Julia Doubleday. Couldn't be more excited. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Estamos presentando Super Premier Universal. Advance, el primer cigarrillo de bajos índices. Algún día, todos lo serán. El tiempo y la experiencia dieron origen a una noble tradición en café y al Nescafé clásico del hogar chileno, que desde hoy es un clásico de Nescafé por su aroma íntegro y auténtico sabor. Y si usted quiere darse un gusto, saboree el nuevo Preso Preso de Nescafé. Un café fuerte y con cuerpo. Clásico y Preso Preso son de Nescafé, una noble tradición en café.
welcome back to the committee program. I'm Julia Doubleday, and this is a dispatch from the field. I'm here in Santiago, Chile, and with me is Barbara Sepulveda. She is an elected member of the Constitutional Convention, where delegates are currently rewriting the Chilean Constitution to replace the one written under brutal dictator Augusto Pinochet. She is a constitutional lawyer who graduated from the University of Chile. She also holds a master's in gender from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She's currently a professor of constitutional law, political theory, and feminist theory of law at the Alberto Hurtado University. Barbara is joining us today to talk about the many, many exciting things happening in Chilean politics, from the presidential elections, which will take place this Sunday, to the ongoing Constitutional Convention and what that process looks like, to the recent impeachment in the lower house of the current President Piñera. So thank you so much for joining us today, Barbara.
Thank you.
Before we sort of dive headlong into what's happening right now, we want to take it back a couple of steps and do a little bit of a history lesson. So first we want to talk about this constitution that's being replaced. So when was it written? Why was it written? Who was involved in writing it? And why is there this need to replace the prior constitution?
It was during the dictatorship. Pinochet, he formed this commission of men, mainly just men, only 2 women participated. He asked for a new constitution that would lead to authoritarian democracy, because they were thinking about replacing the constitution from 1925, but also they tried to install a regime that will last a lot of time. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of Democrats and Democrats in the commission, in the committee, but the dictatorship just get them working like for a lot of years, just trying to design this regime that was very authoritarian, who had military and the police always overseeing all the institutions were civil institutions. So they tried to make this figure of the dictator just led to a president who had all this I don't know how to. It's all this power that he held during the dictatorship, but being a president in a democracy. So the constitution was designed for that, for a democracy who was, we say, democracia tutelada. That means that you have all the democracy just retained into a frame of constitutional norms, legal norms that just kept the power in a little group of people. Mm-hmm. That people also is the right-wing people with money, with power in our country. And that's been for 30 years after the dictatorship. This constitution had a lot of reforms, but never, not even one of them, just question the center of the power, that the goals that same constitution tried to put in our democracy. So the main author of that constitution, Jaime Guzman, mm-hmm. He said, we're gonna make a constitution, so it doesn't matter which government, which politicians are in power, all the things are gonna remain the same. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna be like the illusion that things are changing, but nothing's gonna change.
Right. So essentially this constitution, the way it was written, the central core tenets of it were dedicated to protecting the wealth of a few a small group of people, and to maintaining that wealth, and to protecting valuable land, water, and resources from ever benefiting the public as a whole. So over the last few decades, it sounds like there have been a lot of reforms to this constitution, but ultimately, on just a deep level, it's not reformable because it was written so that you could never change the fundamental goal of what they were trying to accomplish, which is just this sort of maintenance of the oligarchy in the long term.
That's right.
So more recently, before the measure passed that you guys were going to write a new constitution, just in the last 5 years, we saw these really massive protest movements, which I know were partially a big piece of how the constitutional convention came to be. So can you tell us about these protests that have been going on over the last 5 years? What specific things were people protesting? Why were people so upset? And how did that energy sort of lend itself to this movement to rewrite the constitution?
I think it has a lot to do with the problems that we have in our kind of democracy. Especially because people always say, this is a common say here, that they go to vote on the elections, but nothing changes. In their lives, everything remains the same. So that thing, just going to vote, even if we are changing governments between one party and another, and nothing changes for their lives, that tells us a lot of what our system is and how it works and how the constitution works. So we have here a system that kept the state just restrained by the constitutional norms. So just the private sector will go and provide for the people with costs. You need to have money here to have good healthcare, education, quality education, and also to have a pension if you retire, and if you're an old person in our country. It's just, you don't want to be an old person in Chile. There, a lot of old people needs to continue working after the retirement, because they don't have enough money to survive. This is an expensive country. Things cost a lot. We don't have social rights guaranteed by the state. So we had this system. It's well, Chile was the neoliberal laboratory of the world.
Yes.
So we have the worst of neoliberalism. And all the efforts that have been made to just trying to give some help to the people economically, it's not enough. So the private sector just with this monopolizing everything in the social rights has been or just had a lot of consequences for most of the people, the majority of people. We have a system that is supposed to be designed for the state just to... I'm so sorry about
It's okay. Say hi, kitty. Hi, kitty. Okay. Does not want me to.
So we have a system that was designed for, if you could imagine that the people who thought the system, if they were thinking the best of it, they were thinking, okay, so we have a lot of people, they have money, they can pay for stuff, so let's give all of this to the private sector, and the state is gonna act, it's gonna take part of this only for this little segment of the population who is really poor. We're talking about extreme poverty.
Right.
But that doesn't work because during 30 years in our country, most of the people, because this is you have bad salaries and this is an expensive country, so you have most of the people trying to get access to the public sector of providing social rights.
Right.
So public education, public health. So you don't have this little segment of the population just needing to the state to provide.
Right.
So because it's the majority, and because the state doesn't provide, this led to a lot of anger and frustration, and it kept the protests here in Chile. They didn't begin in 5 years ago. It was a lot of years, maybe 10, 20 years of protests. Education, health, labor. We had even the demand for a new constitution, retirement programs and stuff. And now, in 2018, the feminist movement opened a gate of massive protests in Chile. So it was because of the feminist movement that I think something woke up and something woke up in the population.
Wow.
And just a year after that, we had the massive protests of transport and stuff, and that led to the estallido social. I don't know how you call it. How do you call it? Chilean.
Yeah, I don't.
No, you don't have a name for it.
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, so what was the sort of triggering event that? So you were saying this movement, the feminist movement, was sort of opened the door to this. Was there something that happened that the feminist movement was really specifically rallying around when they started to sort of spark off this much larger movement?
That movement was mainly at the beginning because we don't have many laws that protect women from sexual abuse, sexual harassment, especially on universities and schools.
Yeah.
So the movement began there.
Okay.
With those women, with those academics and students. And I think that led to other demands that were historical here from the feminist movement, especially around violence, gender violence, and also abortion and other things that we were protesting every year, all the time. But then with the students and the academic sector just very involved in this, I think it had this power, maybe this youthful power that led to bigger and bigger protests, and then just a movement. And then we had the estallido social with in October and 19th, and then we had las tesis. So it was just like a snowball of social movements that just we said estallido because it something exploded.
Yes. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the violence in the riots of the police, shooting people with rubber bullets and that kind of stuff. I've noticed around the city, I've seen the imagery of an eye, and I was told that a lot of times when you see the eye or an eye with blood or something, it's to do with people getting their eyes shot out during those protests by the police.
More than 400 people.
Wow.
Yes, that was actually, I think that we have two sides of the protests. One side is the colorful movement with a lot of people just it was very cheerful, and I think it brought us a lot of hope. Like things can change, we can do better. And then this B side, like this dark side of the protest it involved all the violations of human rights with the police and the military, because we had military on the streets, on just shooting people with rubber bullets, but also with a different kind of bullet that it's lead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're very small.
It's like a pellet gun maybe or something like that.
I don't know how you say that in English, but because I was on the Feminist Association of Lawyers here in Chile, we took this role on the defense of human rights. So while my friends and everyone was like in these cheerful riots and protesting, I was on the police stations, just trying to get all the detainees out, just wondering where the people were, because there were so many detainees. In just one night, you had 1,000 people and spread around the city, and you didn't know where your family was. So we had these lists that people gave us, like, that's my son, that's my brother, that's my sister, and I don't know where they are. And we had to find them. And most of the time, they were in very bad conditions.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of violation of human rights. And also with women protesters, they had a lot of abuse, sexual abuse from the police and from the military. So we had to take legal actions against the police, against the state, against the president, against the Minister of Interior. So it was very, very a very dark moment of the protests, and that just kept going, even though we had 5 different reports from international organizations of human rights. We had 5 different reports, and nobody.
They're just ignored.
Yeah. But in the government, of course. But NGOs and civil rights organizations, we were just taking the lead on civil actions, penal actions, and they are still, they're still going on. Yes. Most of the cases never had
a resolution or
because police here, it's an institution that protects itself a lot. And
same in the US for sure.
Of course. So we had maiming, mutilation of people, and 30 people died because in the context of a protest, that's not normal.
Wow. That's crazy.
So we had even impeachment for the president here because of the human rights violations, and Congress just didn't do anything.
So in the wake of these really massive protests, how did this whole process of rewriting the Constitution get started? Like, I believe there was a ballot measure where people could vote whether they wanted to have a constitutional convention. And then beyond that, when did you decide, okay, well, I think, I would like to be involved. I'm a constitutional lawyer. When did you decide to run to be a delegate, and why?
I think it was a process. Many people ask me that, and I'm trying to remember, like, if it was like one moment and one day that I decided, and I don't remember. It was so those very turbulent times.
Yeah.
We had this protests at the same time. We were trying to just protect civil rights, and we were taking action, and in human rights. We have like puedo decir en español es observando, like watchers, like civil watch, like watchdogs for civil rights.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But also we were on the courts, just so it was, and suddenly this huge demand for a new constitution just it began to spread, and a lot of organizations were contacting us from the Association of Feminist Lawyers, because they wanted to know, because we tried all the time to make the knowledge, the legal knowledge, more democratic, like, and going to trying to, especially for women and children, we're always trying to teach, like, these are your rights, this is how you can defend them. So they were contacting us to go and explain people, like regular people, how the constitution works and why do we need a change, because everybody was talking about that.
Yeah.
So I began to go, I think I went to hundreds of assemblies and meetings just to talk about the constitution, how it is one of our main problems,
right,
and how that actually affects our lives. That some people just think the constitution is something like it's something so abstract.
Right, abstract, totally. Yeah, we have that issue for sure.
But it's I think it's civic education that we lack of. But in that moment, I realized that I could help with this knowledge, but also because I'm a feminist activist, I had a lot of requests from my feminist compañeras,
comrades, yeah.
To just, they said, like, if this is happening, like, you should go. You should be one.
So you did get encouraged. There were people around you who felt like you would be good in that role.
But I asked them, like, I'm not doing this alone by myself. Like, going into an election, like, this is not university.
It's a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's very scary.
Because I had a lot of, how do you say, like, university politics. Like, I participated there.
Yeah. Like,
and
the student government is what we call it,
Yeah, I was one of the leaders and stuff, but that's like...
very different.
So different.
Yeah.
And I said, like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm doing this because I have you. And if you come with me, like all these organizations, and you don't leave me alone, then maybe I can do it. And also my, because I'm part of a political party, they said, like, you should go because you have the knowledge and all the qualities, and feminism is so important right now in Chile. And because we had this very important role in feminism here in Chile with the association, they said, like, you have to go, please go. I said, okay. And I never thought I could win. A lot of people told me, like, I was gonna win, but I never...
You never believed it.
No. I think never believed it. Actually, when I won, I was, like, skeptical.
You're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Maybe recount. I call for a recount. Just to be sure.
I was like, what? I saw my name on the TV and my picture and my family
were just confused.
and all my comrades, like, just partying and celebrating. I was like sitting there. What happened?
Yeah, wow. And then it's also that immediate question of like, wow, what have I gotten myself into? Because, you know, like you're so focused on the campaign, then when you win, it's like, and now I have to do this thing. That's a really challenging thing.
I have all these conversations with people all the time. And they're like, the people in my district, my district is a very poor district, and I have a lot of people who tells me like, you are our only hope.
Wow.
And I don't know how the rest of the conventionals, how do they sleep at night?
Yeah.
It's very hard for me.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. I take all this responsibility upon my shoulders, and I'm just like, okay, I'm doing this. I try to always answer everyone, talk to everyone, be present in the territories and communes, and just like talking to NGOs all the time.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. He's fine.
They love cameras.
Yeah.
I swear. That's why I don't do things in my eyes, because they are. Yeah, they love cameras.
We like to have the cats come on camera. That's actually part of our shtick. We
Okay.
like as many cats as possible.
Okay,
So here he
I'm
comes.
so sorry.
Here's the big boy, the big girl. Oh.
Yeah. Just go. Pupi, vaya para allá. So what was I saying?
Just talking about, you know, after being elected and having to be in touch with so many stakeholders and having so many people relying on you, and and then the cat.
Mi amor. Eso.
Curious.
Yeah. Wanted to say hi.
Now we got them both on, so they both got some screen time, fortunately.
So yeah, and it's hard because we have just 1 year to do this.
Okay. Yes.
And it's I think it gets, most of the pressure is just because we had such little time to do this, but mostly I think because people are just putting all their hopes in us, and this dream that things can change, like for the first time in 30 years,
on a real fundamental level.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely want to know more about this process and what's going on now. You know, what does it look like as a delegate when you go to work? How does this process unfold? I mean, how does a group of like a few hundred people rewrite a constitution? And how long is this process going to be ongoing? And then what happens when the draft is done?
Well, it was at the beginning. It was very weird. I think it was. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
Nobody knew each other.
Yeah.
We were
like a really weird summer camp.
Yes. like the weirdest classmates. Like just I don't know. There was a lot of like suspicion.
Yeah.
Between everyone.
Yeah.
Because we have some of the constituents are men who had like this political experience, and they were part of the Congress before. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's just a minority, but they have a lot of experience. So you had to be careful when you talk to them, and maybe think things twice before you talk to them, and what they're I don't know. They're
politicians.
Like,
they're like professional politicians. You just have to be wary, you know, of what you say to them.
Because we have a lot of people who comes from social movements, and most of the people I think comes from social movements and NGOs and stuff.
Which is amazing. And that's another thing I wanted to mention or ask you about, is just that I heard when the elections happened to elect the constitutional delegates that the sort of political establishment here was very rocked by the results, because a lot of leftists and a lot of people outside of the sort of
the political
parties did get elected.
Yeah, that happened, and it's great.
Yeah,
like, we I think we have this has been like a process of learning a lot of different realities. We have 17 escaños reservados, so like reserved seats for indigenous people. 17 from different indigenous people here, and we don't have anything like that in another political assembly here.
Right.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
We have 50% of women, and we have a lot of independents, not members from political parties, a lot of leftists, and almost none from political center. And that was very surprising, because they monopolized politics for 30 years.
Yes.
The center,
right.
The political center. And now it's gone.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing this pattern everywhere. I think this is one of the things that really interested us in trying to do an international politics podcast, is that in the US, we had Trump get into power and we saw this really major collapse of centrism. And there was a lot of confusion in the political elite. So the reaction to it was never like, let's figure out what's going on here. It was like, this is crazy. Everyone is crazy. And like, it's just like, whether you think people are crazy or not, it's like a very unproductive way to analyze a situation. So like, if you get into a situation, you say, like the center doesn't seem to have a lot of people that are really excited about it anymore. Like the best reaction should be like, I wonder why. And that hasn't been happening in the US. I mean, basically it's just been this really massive effort to like just pack everybody back into the moderate bag, and using Trump as sort of a cudgel to get people back in there and like elect Joe Biden. But the reality is, I think we've seen it in Europe, we're seeing it here, we've seen it all around the world. There's this collapse of belief in political moderatism, because there's a collapse of faith in our institutions. There's a collapse of faith that the future is going to be better than the present. And I think ultimately what usually sustains centrism or moderatism is this idea that like the status quo is pretty good, or it's okay, or it's doing pretty good for me. So why would I want to make a massive radical change where things could come out worse for me? But right now, most people living under very centrist politicians are saying, things are getting bad, and it seems like they're only going to get worse. Yeah. So of course I want to make some kind of radical change. And whether that radical change is, rewriting our constitution and making sure that people are able to reap the benefits of all the wealth we have, versus, locking all the doors and, letting poor people die, which is a sort of fascist side of things. But
that's also like a danger, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because for feminist movements happens all the time. Like we have this backlash. It happened in the US. It happened in Central America. It happened in Brazil. It happened even in Argentina. In this the little just amount of time, for just a few years with Macri. So it's a danger that radical change could also be a radical just backlash.
Well, and I think this is why we sometimes talk about moderate liberalism being a sort of handmaid into fascism, because what happens is people need radical change. They need to be able to have healthcare. They need to be able to have education. They need to live on a planet that's not going to burn them alive and destroy all their crops. They need all of those things. So they're going to try and organize to replace the current system that we have. And sometimes when you're a wealthy moderate liberal who's doing well under the status quo, you really don't want to change the status quo.
Of course
so what
you don't.
So what you do is you continually try to destroy the left, and if you're successful, what you're left with is the fascists winning. I mean, this is just a complete gift to them, and we saw it. I know here when Allende was overthrown, there were a lot of people who were rich people who were like, well, I don't necessarily believe in like bombing our own government and having a military coup, but Allende is crazy and he's going to take my stuff. So so maybe Pinochet won't be that bad. So there is this sort of history of especially wealthy, moderate people enabling fascism, extreme right-wingism, just to avoid having to like pay taxes or give anything away.
They are trying very hard during this constituent process to maintain their privileges. Yeah. And they have a lot of them here. So it's hard because we know inside of the convention they are the minority, and they're also the minority in the rest of spaces of politics, but they have control of all the media. They have control of what people hear and what people see, and it's very hard for us to contest those kind of propaganda.
Yeah, we have the same issue. We have a few corporate media outlets, and they're very, very. They all have the same outlook. Fox News is more on the right wing, but they all generally have this sort of centrist worldview that's like things are pretty good the way they are, and radical change is crazy.
Yeah.
And if you're on the radical left, meaning like you want people to have healthcare, you're just as crazy as Trump, who wants everyone to die. I mean, just some people, not everyone.
Yeah, they try to do that.
They like to equate it.
I believe that for us here in Chile, everything is gonna be more clear this Sunday because of the elections.
Yes,
but some people I know, very smart, intelligent people, are very afraid of Cast, of the extreme far right.
Definitely, I've heard that.
To be elected,
So,
because we have Bolsonaro here in Brazil, in South America.
It's not impossible. I mean, it is just this splintering that we're seeing everywhere. But so you brought it up. Let's pivot a little bit to make sure that we get in a little conversation about the reason I'm actually in town, which is the big election, the presidential election, as well as down ballot elections that are taking place this Sunday. There are, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there are 6 presidential candidates, but 2 are the main frontrunner, including Konst, who she was just mentioning, who's very far right. So could you tell us about these 2 frontrunner candidates and, maybe your expectation of what might happen on Sunday, and also a little bit about Konst and why he's so scary?
Well, he is scary for I think there's this deputy who said like exactly what this means for us. He said this is civilization versus barbarian. Like we have all this little progress that the constitution of the dictatorship allowed us to have. Such little progress in women rights and LGBT rights, and for human rights to be like a part of the common sense. And now this extreme fascist, he's just trying to get us not only backwards in history. He's just, I think he's trying to install a regime that looks a lot like a mixture between Bolsonaro in Brazil and Trump in the US. He's not talking about walls for immigrants. He's talking about holes in the ground, like la zanja. How do you say that? when
Holes in the ground?
yeah, like
a sinkhole?
digging but like it's not a wall, it's a hole in
Like
the
a
ground.
trench?
Like a trench.
Yeah.
In the frontier.
Oh, yeah.
So he can stop
Yes.
migrants.
Yes,
to,
like a trench.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get into Chile. It's
Right.
It's crazy.
Right.
And everyone is talking about that. Like it was so normal.
Right.
And that's why I think media has a lot of responsibility, and on him just going up on the
On TV.
yeah. On las encuestas, on
Like in the polls. Yeah.
in the polls, he's going up,
Yeah.
and that's very frightening.
This is the same thing that also happened with Trump. I mean, our media gave him tons of free airtime. You know,
Because-
like they would show a countdown to when he was coming on to his rally. They would show his plane landing. They would show him get off the plane. Then they would air his entire rally. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders was having these really, really massive rallies as well.
I know.
And they not only wouldn't record them or wouldn't show them, they never showed a minute of them. They wouldn't even mention them. Like
Yeah.
they were not even mentioned by
I
the
know.
media. And so, you know, you have this media environment where Trump just got hours and hours and
But
hours of coverage.
normalized. Because
Normalized.
they-
Absolutely normalized.
They
yes.
they talk. They
Right.
say things
Right.
that are outrageous, and
Right.
and people are just like, oh, you wanna dig a trench on the frontier? Okay,
Of course.
No, but the question is not like what are you thinking? Like
Right.
the question is, how much is that gonna cost? And
Right.
it's
I see. Yes, it's very normalized.
so normalized,
Right.
and okay,
Like that's
we're
just
gonna,
a normal
yeah.
expenditure that a government could have.
We're gonna give some help, economic help, to women who are married, straight women who are married
Yes.
with children. That's gonna be the main public policy from our government, and we're gonna build more thermoeléctricas, thermal.
Yeah.
We have
thermal power, like thermal
Yeah,
heating?
plants.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
that the same thing that COP26 said, like we need to
Stop doing
just stop right now, and
Yeah.
even we have charcoal mines here in Chile.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of minerals that are just like exploitation that are destroying our environment, and he says climate change, we're not sure that's a real thing, and
Right.
he just say things like that.
Right.
And I think, what is this, like 10 years ago you wouldn't see that on TV.
So is climate denial is like newer here? Like is denial been like in the US we've had
it is not, no it's very new. I know in the US.
Okay. Yeah. In the US, it's pretty much from day one. We've had this really massively bankrolled campaign to tell everyone it's fake. So it has been successful, but it's also been unsuccessful in the sense that because we have a very corrupt oligarchical government, if you look at the public polling, people actually do believe in it. Like a majority of people believe in it, even in the Republican Party, a majority of people believe in it. But unfortunately, that's just not represented in our government because it's very controlled by oil interests. So yeah, we've had this like very long.
And I think it's kind of funny, like we how we have to talk about that now. Like, do you believe in
Right.
it? Believe.
That must be very-
It's not something to believe. It's something that's happening.
It must be
We
very
have, like,
frustrating,
yeah.
honestly, to be just like getting introduced to this concept of like, okay, actually, maybe it's fake because it's a very good distraction, right? If we're all just arguing whether it's fake or not, we're not even working on solving the problem because first we have to convince people it even exists, which is this like very heavy lift, despite the fact that it's like quite obviously happening at this point. I mean, like 10 or 15 years ago, I can see it was easier. Now it's like, I just get an alert every day on my phone that's like, oh, there was like a blizzard in a weird place and, you know, the sky opened up and cats fell out and, you know, whatever else.
Yeah.
Real end of times weather alerts.
Yeah, and the COP26, I was talking to these people yesterday from this Chilean group of young women, and they said we thought we had 10 years to this very, very bad consequences started to show up. Well, now we have 7 because every 2 months it's shorter. And
yeah. Well, so one of the really messed up things they do when they make those climate projections as well is that their goal until recently is we're going to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which I think is like basically a pipe dream at this point. But even when they talk about...
It's impossible.
Yeah, even when they talk about their most aggressive plans to get us there, all of the plans include technology that hasn't been invented yet, and there's no proof that it will ever be able to exist. So like... at scale carbon capture technology that doesn't actually exist. Like the way that we talk about it and the way we talk about it in the press, it's like, well, we can use carbon capture. They haven't been able to get it to work very well, and we certainly wouldn't be able to get it to work well enough and broadly enough in the time frame that we have for that to have any sort of massive impact. But all of the projections, even like the good groups that are trying to do an honest projection of how climate change is going to affect the Earth, they always include this massive imaginary carbon capture in their strategies and in their projections.
And also how the government say that we have till 2030 to do all of this. And when you ask indigenous people, like, what do they think about that?
Yeah.
And they say like, oh, so they have till 2030 to just devastate all of the Amazonas and all of our lands and leave us with nothing.
Right.
They have 9 years to do that. And in 9 years, they're going to do that. They're going to devastate everything because they're allowed to do it till 2030.
Right.
So, well, here in Chile, it's very, the environmental issue is very like an emergent issue. But the Constitutional Convention, we declare on a state of climate emergency.
Amazing.
So we're trying to build an environmental friendly constitution, and it's going to be very hard to do because a lot of the right-wing constituents are just there to protect their economic interests.
Right.
And this is a country that exports rocks.
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And, well, since the 90s, that hasn't changed. So it's very problematic for them because all the investments that they have, everybody knows that for stop this, they have to just leave all those extractivism. They're not willing to do it because money is for them is the main goal.
Yeah, it's the same everywhere. I mean, in the U.S., we came back from COP, and Biden immediately approved this really massive new oil and gas wells, I think, in the Gulf of Mexico. I could be wrong about the details, but I just know it was a massive fossil fuel deal that it was literally days after we came back from COP. And I mean, all of that is climate denial because we know, the Democrats are this party that say we have to listen to the science. But if you ask any scientist, like, can we keep building fossil fuel infrastructure? They'll tell you no. Like, of course we can't keep building new fossil fuel infrastructure. Yeah. That's the last thing we should be doing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing Cast is just promoting.
Yeah.
And we have this, I think we have this similarity with the US, with Trump. Mm-hmm. That I think this of course, the far right has like this manual of far right populism, and they're just going like
they stay on message.
They stick to it, and well, Cast, he's creating this public enemy that's migration.
Yep,
that's the same thing that Trump did. That's the same thing,
definitely,
and I think this. They have this discourse of the far right, the fascism, to appeal very strongly to those middle class segments of the population and tell them like, well, this has nothing to do with the neoliberal system. If you don't get education, if you don't have healthcare, it's not because of the other of capitalism, of neoliberalism. It's not because of that. It's because we have migrants, we have immigration, and we have a lot of people who is not a Chilean people, just taking your place in jobs, taking your place in healthcare, taking your place in education. So we love our country, we love our flag, we love our hymn, and we need to give Chile to the Chileans. And that makes more sense to the people who are understudied and uneducated. That makes more sense because it's simpler. It's just...
And for the right wing, where the right wingers are very inculcated, they're very propagandized to really admire the wealthy, and also, at least like in the U.S., we have this whole myth of the American dream, which is that anybody can become wealthy and you just work hard. And so it's this whole value system of like, well, if someone's wealthy, that means they're probably good and they worked hard and they're good. So to come to that same person and say like, hey, we can make a lot of changes. We have to take things from these really wealthy people because they don't deserve them. That just goes up against a very deep-seated ideology, a belief system that they have, which is that I'm going to work hard and I'm going to get rich. And those people worked hard and they got rich, so they're good. And these other people...
They're poor.
They're poor, so they're bad. You know?
And they're poor because they want to be poor. Right. Because they don't effort enough. And that's... Well... We know that speech, but I think it's very hard for people in the left to just contest those kind of discourses because it's harder. Because you have to explain a lot of things.
It's harder because it all goes back to this, again, like you were saying with the Constitution, it's this underlying structure that is the issue, and it's hard in a soundbite to explain that.
It's okay, if I go to an assembly and I say like, all of your problems come from this structural design system with a rational neoliberalism, economic rationality that goes in through all the institutional system, and it just like it's not provided for you because of this regulation, and people, and then comes this guy and says like, well,
it's that guy's
when
fault.
you go, when you go to your health care. It's like
your doctor, your health healthcare provider.
What do you see when you're in line? And you see and they, it's primary health. We have consultorios. It's like very small. It's not a clinic. It's not a hospital. It's just a very small place with primary health. And all people go there. It's part of the public health system. So if you go and you see. Sometimes they're not gonna, you're not gonna get healthcare attention because there's a migrant in line. That's what you see. So that's the answer to everything.
There's someone in front of me in line. Fuck that guy.
And so they're in our schools, taking our jobs and whatever. So everything, the problem can reduce to that. And that's simpler. And it's just people just believe it.
Fighting over crumbs. And you know what I was saying before too, it's like this almost religious, like the way that people are so committed to the system and the way that we keep them on these like hamster wheels is that like we do promise them like, look, like that's going to be you someday, and like you're going to work really hard, and then like you can be like these people that you admire so much. So any sort of explanation that tells them that everything they've done in their entire life was actually not necessarily like this really smart and important thing that they're doing, that they're going to earn their place among like the good, better people. So anything that shatters that worldview is just something they're not going to want to understand, you know?
It's for us, I think the left, even though we had the example of Trump and Bolsonaro and the rest of the far right, Vox in Spain.
Yeah.
We had a lot of examples like of this going on, and we haven't learned, I believe, how to just stand up, just how to stop that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things you can read about that, and well, my favorite to understand what happened in the US is Wendy Brown. and when I read her talking about the far right in the world, in the US and Europe, and it's like I'm reading what's happening in Chile. And I said, like, we all saw this coming.
Yep.
And now there's a slight chance that we're gonna fall into a far right regime. Far right regime, because Sebastián Piñera, it's a far right regime as well.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't believe it, but also I do believe it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's our responsibility, but politicians and people who are like activists, and we need to just do something, and it's not just a regional thing. I believe it's a worldwide thing that needs solidarity, international solidarity, and it's very hard.
Yeah,
it's very hard, but it's something that we have to learn, and fast.
Yeah, well said. And I think one thing that is so challenging is that even though individuals and people in politics were really bound to these sort of national borders, but when it comes to capital and the uber wealthy and the oligarchy and major corporate actors, they're not really bound by any sort of artificial borders or laws. They can kind of go around the world and decide what laws they want to obey. So the right has this very big advantage of being able to play nations against each other. It's not like the workers can say, hey, you know what, we're not getting a very good wage in Chile, so we're all going to go to Argentina. But Amazon can do that. Amazon can say, hey, you know what, you're making us pay the workers too much in Pakistan, so now we're going to go to Bangladesh. And that's like very, very... two very different realities that we have to face down. And I think the first step, though, comes in, as you guys here are doing, is sort of understanding where the structural issues are and trying to address those. I think we need to wrap up here. But before you go, again, thank you so much for joining us. Is there, what are you thinking about what's going to happen on Sunday? And, do you think there's going to be a runoff? What are your thoughts on Sunday's election? I'm
hopeful.
Hopeful's good.
Yeah. I'm trying to just remain hopeful. I think we had a good campaign. It's gonna be, well, it's gonna be, you're gonna notice that a lot of people vote for the center left, not just Gabriel Boric, but I think it's gonna be more like we're gonna have more votes, but it's gonna be hard because because of the right politicians here in Chile are just destroyed their credibility, and they destroy their parties. Now, because of that, their candidate that it's right, just right,
yeah,
it's not far right. That candidate is I think it was our hope that he could concentrate all those votes, and so Cast just kept in the first row. So for the second election, I hope we will have Gabriel Boric and probably a center-right candidate.
Okay.
Maybe Jasna Proboste.
Okay.
Hopefully. But that's me being very optimistic.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so we are going to be watching that closely. By the time this airs, I think it's going to go up tomorrow. And then, so the next day, Sunday, is going to be election day. And we'll definitely keep y'all posted as those results are.
Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be going around and talking to people. So, yeah, definitely excited to see what happens.
So, probably we'll meet on Sunday at the presidential command of Gabriel Boric.
Okay. That would be amazing. Yeah, and maybe I can do some live streams. All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll keep you up to date as this election gets underway.
La imagen por la cual vale la pena arriesgar la vida, sacrificarse hasta la muerte en los campos de batalla de todos los continentes del mundo.